Welcome everyone. Today we have our another new episode. We will discuss on ESG. I believe many of our audience knows that already we declared about this hydrothons next month. Many of the youth communities they are joining. More than 3,000 students actually joining in our hydrothons, and we have our final day. We have our open dialogues. Uh, I want to invite Mr. Marshall, Professor David Smith, uh, Mr. Ras, and Matt Savin to this exclusive event. And most important thing is that not only this our session will be open dialogue, side by side we will bring all of the talented people from India, as well as we will train them. We are also offering them scholarships and many opportunities from World Talent Economy Forum and School of Talent Economy. And Mr. Marshalls and Professor David Smith, they are actually supporting World Talent Economy Forum with their organization. So they have some excellent views and excellent solutions. So first, I would like to give chance to Mr. Marshall. I believe they have their presentation today.
Thank you, Sharif. It's a pleasure to be here, and uh, we're here to issue part two on how to deal with water problems in the developing world. And so, what we want to do is we obviously want to continue the conversation about the water issues. Water issues. Oh, I think I stopped that. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go. So, so to start off, I'd like to. We have the first slide up. Mark Sabin will take it from here, and then we'll move on throughout the issue of water. Mark, why don't you introduce Russ Michael, who is our COO and has dealt with water issues over his career.
Sure. Thank you, Marshall. So what we wanted to talk to today and address the issue of the global water issues that we're facing and that are particularly facing the developing world really range beginning with several different challenges that are facing people. And as you can see from this slide, the picture on the right there, we're looking at a lot of the way that water is being treated and being the wastewater that's being actually treated. And one of the things that we find that are happening both with wastewater, but also with runoff water and things like that is a problem called eutrophication, which is when the detritus that gets into the water begins to decompose and begins to withdraw the oxygen out of water. And along with the organic things in the water from fertilizer and from phosphorus and some of the things that are being running off along with the soil are heavy metals that get into the water. And one of the things that we're seeing now globally are dead zones that are happening not only in lakes and streams, but now we're seeing the oceanic level of dead zones. We're seeing, of course, plastic waste that is permeating the seas. A lot of these different issues that we wanted to be able to address today and sort of put an introduction into some of the problems that are facing. And what we have brought today is Russ Michael, who has had a long career working in the water industry. He's worked with recreational water. He has a long history of understanding not only the technology that goes along with water and the filtration of water, but also some of the other more technical things that go along with how we deal with it from a software perspective. And so I wanted to ask Russ if he would be able to take us through, and if we go to the next slide, where we're going to start to talk about this issue that is really about the lack of oxygen and what that does for water. So Russ, if you'd like to take over and discuss some of these issues that we're facing today, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Marshall. And thank you, Sharif, for speaking to the matter. Water and scarcity is a global problem. And it's worse. And sometimes it's difficult to wrap our heads around this notion of water stress because conventional. The Earth is a planet. There's no water shortage. 70% of our surface is covered by water, and that's 306 million trillion gallons of it. Where's the problem? And add to that, these have and will have water. Water may freeze, ice or evaporate into, but it doesn't leave our planet. That's the problem. The problem is 97% of it is salty, and 2% of it is trapped in ice at the pole. And all of humanity relies on just 1% of water to survive. So when we're talking about water, what we're really trying to say is, do they have access to that 1%? And if that's not enough, at the same facing water pollution. Harsh reality attacks all people, and all, regardless of class or status. About 80% of the world's wastewater is dumped or treated back environment, polluting lakes and oceans. Every day, 2 million tons of sewage and industrial and agricultural waste is discharged to the world's water supply. To understand the scale of that number, the pollution is equivalent to the weight of the entire human of our planet on a daily basis. Current projections indicate by 2040, most won't have enough water to meet year-round demand. That's significant. This is much more. So much is true. We're facing a global water crisis, and it's getting. We're at a friction point, and there's not. If we're not careful, it may actually get ahead of us and our ability to manage it. And when that happens, it is day zero. Water's gone. Without water, we'll few days, because there's no substitute for water. Crucial. The harsh is that, again, it affects all people and all. And let's drill on this a bit more. Civilizations that harness the water thrive. Civilizations that ignored failed. Many cities are living on the edge right now. Paulo, Jakarta, and Beijing, Istanbul, Tokyo, Bangalore, Barcelona City will all face their own zero in the next years, unless their water source radically changes. So we know that 1% of the Earth's water is what we get to continue to unpack this percent. This ration. Most of it is underground and really difficult to expect that. However, we got already accessing groundwater, but there's a catch. Those water deposits, aquifers, have accumulated over the millennia, and it need to fill back up. Groundwater is like a safe account, which is fine if we draw on it, especially when you have a drought. Mexico's been taking about 50% of their water from their aquifer. That means they'll probably lose half of their water aquifer in the next 30 years. Down on groundwater has another side effect. It's soil. Mexico City is literally sinking some places as much as 9 inches a year. NASA shows us the aquifer in India decreasing by 29 trillion gallons in just simply more people on Earth consuming more water. The century, the water consumption increased fold. And know that we count on for refilling our lakes and rivers is getting us rely. Well, that's pretty grim. There are things that, and there are some really, really uplifting stories out there. We do it. Education, awareness, new conservation technology, recycle wastewater, improve irrigation and natural water pricing, energy efficient desalination plants, water harvesting, community governance and partnerships. Urgent business to invest in clean toilets. A great Cape Town, African team becoming the first major city of the world to drinkable water. Between 2015 and 2018, then rainfall resulted in its worst drought, brought on the brink of growth for them. The point when the municipal water supply gets shut off. While Cape Town's water crisis was declared national emergency in 2018, today the dam by the city are overflowing. Habit reallocating water. Residents and business became water wise, increasing the cost, investing in new technologies. Hope. But let's be clear. It's as if the world itself declared war on the thing most.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. Thanks, Russ, for laying out the threat to people around the world. The climate crisis is now, here and now. It's imminent. I know that people are thinking about other crises that are happening in the world today, but the climate crisis is not just big and enormous. It is affecting us together today. Mark, why don't you show some of the means of how our team, and together with the World Talent Economic Forum and other partners around the world, can address these issues?
Sure, thank you. So as you can see in this slide that we're now, if you go to the next slide, water equals life. It is really the most essential ingredient next to air for us to be able to survive. And clean water is a particularly huge issue that is facing the developing world. And one of the ways that we have working with water and water treatment, particularly, to try to be able to clean water. And one of the biggest elements that we can bring into water is an element that is also essential to our survival, which comes from the air, and that is oxygen. And the oxygen in water actually accelerates what's happening with the microbial life so that it begins to digest some of the waste materials. And the oxygenated water will actually help to reduce what's happening in terms of the bottom sludge in the water and to consume some of the microbial life and to actually foster the aquatic life so that the process, the natural process of water cleaning itself through its own natural processes, through the ingredients that are included in the water, would actually happen. And one of the technologies that has been recently developed and as a patented technology uses what's known as ultra-fine nanobubbles. Now these bubbles are essentially about 100 to 1,000 times smaller than the bubbles that are produced by conventional aeration, or the kind of bubbles that you might see in a carbonated beverage. So they're so small, in fact, that what they're able to do is they actually are able to stay in the water. They're invisible to the naked eye. You'd actually have to be able to use a microscope to be able to see them. And because they move at a much higher velocity, what they begin to do is they begin to support the microbial degradation of organic materials in the water. And the way these actually improve the dissolved oxygen levels in the water, and that fosters this whole process of being able to take this eutrophication or the decaying matter that ends up in the water, including things like pharmaceuticals, including things that need to be actually taken out of the water and extracted from the water, which is part of the process that the team from Advanced Resilient Technology has been engaged in, is in actually resolving these wider ranging environmental problems that are facing the earth. So part of the issue is the filtration issues that need to be done to take out the solid matter out of water. But the other part is this other idea that we were talking about today, which is being able to use the oxygenation that you can use in water. If you go to the next slide, Sharif, you'll see that we're talking about the generators that actually can put water into, oxygen into the water at a much higher level, and actually give you the kind of oxygen transfer efficiency of greater than 90%, which is a huge game changer for bodies of water. It's been being used extensively now. It's been in China. We've actually done a project in Malaysia with a factory that actually produces, I believe it's soy sauce, I believe. And it's been used there to treat the waste that's coming out of the processing, industrial processing now, so that we actually can use that to absorb and so that what comes out in terms of the wastewater is much cleaner and actually can reduce the amount of sludge and other materials that are coming out. So we can actually do that in a quite efficient way. The research that has gone into this really related to some of the medical community's work on what it takes to cross the blood-brain barrier, and to be able to make oxygen that is small enough to actually make that cross. And that is really now being applied in this environmental usage. So if we look at what's happening there, if we can bring this kind of technology, it's been proven. There's over a dozen patents on it. It actually it's ISO certified technology, and it's particularly advantageous so that when we put these systems in and we actually work with water treatment facilities, or we work with natural bodies of water and be able to bring the levels of oxygen into them, we can actually see a huge shift in terms of being able to clean the water, to bring it back to a level where it's useful in agriculture. We see it reduces the mortality in aquatic life. So if you are dealing with fishing farms or shrimp farms, we see a huge improvement there. Oh, that's great, Sharif, because there you can see kind of the comparable dimensions between the nanobubbles there on the right, the ultrafine nanobubbles, and what you would see would be called a microbubble on the left. You can see that it's a huge differential there between the two. That kind of graphically really helps to make it pretty clear. If you look at if we go to the next slide there, just before we go into our discussion, you can actually see an example. That's a comparison there of the fusion differences. So if you look at the slide on the left where you're using aeration, it only goes to a certain depth of the water. So if you look down towards the bottom where you would see the sludge at the bottom, it's not getting down to the level where it's affecting the sludge, which means that it's not supporting the plant life in the lake or river or water body. Whereas on the right, the ultrafine nanobubbles are actually penetrating all the way to the depths of the water, and due to the Brownian motion of and the negative charge on the bubbles, they actually stay in the water for quite a long time, up to something like 90 days. If you go to the next slide there. So again, so for agriculture as well as for what you're looking at now, you have cleaner pipes, you have richer water. It's much better for the plant life. It's the whole nature of how this actually is effective for all these purposes really makes a big difference in terms of keeping the water clean, increasing the growth rates, the sugar content of the crops that are growing. It supports the roots, the microbial life in the soil, so the microbiome that's actually in the soil is improved. And even when you've harvested the foods, if you're using this oxygenated water for washing and cleaning, you're actually taking out some of the pathogens that might be affecting the water there. As I said, in the aquatic life, you can see the fish actually will be larger, they're healthier, the mortality rate is greatly reduced. And as that water enters back from the aquifers into the oceanic waters, again, you'll see an improvement of what happens there. At this point, I think if I'd like to turn it over to David Smith to talk about some of the ways that these solutions can actually be brought in and be made part that actually, how do you actualize the solution? We have the technology, which is great that we are able to do this, but how do we actually implement it? And I think David Smith, if you could speak to those concerns that people might have.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. It's my privilege to do it. You know, the technology which we've been talking about addresses problems that we see in most countries actually around the globe. And is one which is often above the capabilities of many of the local governments to be able to design, finance, and implement. So what we've seen is some of the best practices globally is beginning to put in place partnerships, particularly public-private partnerships, and our joint ventures to begin to go and tackle these types of problems. This type of solution is very interesting because it also has the ability to serve as an economic development catalyst, particularly in many of the regions where you see this type of technology implemented, and to bring the infrastructure of this type of size into communities where it can really make a difference, not only with providing the water, dealing with the global climate change solutions, but even with the local economic development of the region. And as such, it's one which has very, very good paybacks as you look at. But really, the public-private partnerships are one of the keys, because what it does is it gets all the different stakeholders of the community and the region tied together. It brings transparency into the processes so that everyone knows what's happening, and that the funders, the government, the contractors, the citizens, and even the academic institutions can get involved and support this type of initiative. So it's one that has wide benefits across the country in the region, and it was one which the technology and now the funding through these climate bonds is there to be able to support itself. I guess, Marshall, back to you.
Yeah, I think, David, if I might add to that, you know, one of the things that enable the climate bonds will enable us to do will be to actually put in these systems so that they're not just cost centers, but they actually can reduce income for the local community. And so what we're sponsoring, I mean, if you're sponsoring water solutions or these kind of environmental solutions, clearly you're making an environmental impact for the local community, for the people who live in the area. But the other part of it is that you're bringing economic opportunities, which I think is what you're talking about with the public-private partnership. But you're bringing those opportunities into something that's going to foster the health of the community, the people of the community, the economy of the local community. So so really what we're talking about here is a very far-reaching kind of solution that we want to bring into the developing world and to be able to make this happen.
That's great, Mark. I think you nailed and together with David and Russ have addressed the issue of how we together in a public-private partnership can educate people through the World Talent Economic Forum and also create job opportunities for people in these local communities. The whole effort is to use the 17 UN Sustainability Development Goals as our goal. It is the goal that need to be addressed under the EU climate bonds under their various taxonomies. And again, I've mentioned taxonomies, and Sharif likes me to articulate what is a taxonomy. A taxonomy is a set of rules that keeps people from saying one thing and doing another. The common term today after COP26 that's caught on is called greenwashing, where you claim you're going to, remove carbon from the air or sequester CO2, and you don't do it. Or you're going to clean up water and you really don't do it. Here, we've demonstrated in today's session the ability that the technology exists today for us to allow us to solve these problems, but at the same time to address the 17 sustainability development goals, of which our team addresses 14 of the 17, and we're always aspiring to address more. One of the 17 SDGs, or Sustainability Development Goals, is education. And we are very proud to be a part of the World Talent Economic Forum and supporting it in its goals to help educate and create jobs. One of the things that I know that I may be stealing Sharif's thunder, but he's already been put in place the ability to train 100 women in Rwanda. And we're looking forward to doing the same thing with 1,000 women in India or more, I believe. And we look forward to partnering with countries in public-private partnerships, such as India, such as Rwanda, such as Senegal, and other developing world countries, to be able to provide these solutions to climate crisis and address and get outcomes that are tangible and real today. The tangible outcomes that we will address in the next session, which is tied to what we did today. In the beginning, last week, we talked about water and introduced it, and David was able to kind of formulate the structure that we need to bring to the table in the public-private partnerships. Today, he addressed that as well. But here we showed practical technology solutions that can be deployed. The question is, who pays for it? And so the way it's paid for is essentially through these climate bonds. And therefore, the developing world banks can act as guarantors on the climate bond when it comes, while it's in the process of coming to market. But better yet, it then goes out and is able to create funding from institutional investors in Europe and the United States and the Western world. And they are prepared to put the money into it because they get a decent return on investment, because we can prove that. And second, we can actually get tangible deliverables, as you saw in Mark and Russ and David's discussion today about the water solutions of the ultra nano bubble generator. We combine that, by the way, with several other technologies. We combine it with pyrolytic carbon capture and storage. That's you taking organic waste and converting it into a material known as char or biochar, and using that as a filtration media to clean up water in advance of deploying the sustainable technology of the ultra nano bubble generator. And then at the end, if we need to, we can also deploy the technology known as the EnviroProtect, which is a ultra low antimicrobial technology that can used in a sand filter to clean up water. And so, again, we will address more technology issues and give people a practical view of what can be done and what is possible. But what we need is we need to reach out to you folks out there, and we are here for you in the developing world. Everybody's there. They need to be educated. We're there to help provide that education through the World Talent Economic Forum. But we're also here to bring practical solutions that are implementable now, that one can implement now. And one of the things I must say is we can not only implement this now, we need to do it now as soon as possible. Mark, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to just address something about the SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. They really are kind of, they offer the structure or the roadmap for bringing these types of what are called impact investments into the developing world, which is really important because typically we've seen in the past decades that the kind of movement towards the kind of investments into these solution-based opportunities has not been something that's been regularly done. And some new advances have been made in this regard. And part of the way that those advancements have been made is that there's now an interest in making impact investments where your investments are actually improving the situation in people's lives, in the land and in the air and in the water. All of those things are really being governed by these 17 sustainable development goals, which address issues like poverty and life underwater and life in the land and life in the air. All these things which are so important, education, to be able to bring all these things back into, bring in a greater sense of equality in the world, but in a way that supports the diversity of the world. Because we can't sit there and homogenize what we're doing in terms of the approach that we can do to make all the world the same. We don't want to make the world the same. We want to support the cultures. We want to support the people. We want to support the individuality. This is where education and what Sharif is doing with the World Talent Economic Forum is so important, because it's a matter of bringing information to people so that people can use that information to further their own cause, to further their own purposes, to be able to support what's happening in the local communities, but doing it with the support of the broader global community. And that's why these SDGs are so important, and why the climate bond uses those and makes that an essential ingredient in being able to qualify to be able to use the European climate bond.
Thank you, Mark. Sharif, did you want to start any questions?
Yes, just before I starting the question answering session, uh, because 22 March, we already start our projects. We already start our projects. So I just want to share our event, because we are working with uh, Rotary District 3232 India, World Talent Economy Forum. They have Jane Assan's Incubator or Entrepreneurship Forum. Uh, there is also Jal Shakti Mantranalaya Water Ministry in India. We are actually providing support to more than 3,200 students. And in this dialogue, like naturally, uh, very successful entrepreneurs, scholars, politicians, they join in our dialogue. But good point is that for the first time, from this 3,200 students, we actually bring 8 projects for this open dialogue. The students will join, the young people will join with you, and they will discuss their idea and thoughts. And definitely, we gonna help them. We believe we will publish some high quality paper. MDPI actually supporting us, and we are providing 100% scholarship to the students. And for the higher educations or higher studies purpose, we are also helping. And most important thing is that offering good solution, offering good technology, offering right kind of investment to the developing world. So still, even yesterday, some of the global forums, I do research, and I find that different politicians from developing world, uh, they are saying that for their uh, developments, the human resource, as well as for developing different projects, uh, actually they need more support from the developed world. China, it's not me actually, like some foreign ministers, they claim that China actually bring more investment in the table for developing worlds, as well as they are developing more projects. So from North America as well as from the Europe, those who are developed countries, developing worlds want more support and more collaborations. And you are offering a very good things, this climate bond. Uh, but now actually lot of economic recessions, political crisis, lot of challenges, healthcare related challenges also happening. So what do you think? Like this green bond and this climate bond, how effective it is, how it can solve this SDG related problem in the developing world ecosystem, Mr. Marshall.
That's an excellent question, Sharif, and I think you pointed out an issue that is affecting the developing world with the upcoming developing world of China, and of course their political differences. But setting those aside, if we just look at the issues of the climate crisis, we know it's a huge tidal wave that is hitting the Earth. It's like a meteorite that's going to destroy the Earth if we don't do something about it. The good news is we have control and we can do something about it now. And that is what the climate bond, the EU climate bond, is about. There are a category of bonds known as green bonds, and it's confusing because the category of green bonds includes several types of bonds. The climate bond in Europe, the ESG, which stands for Environmental Sustainability and Governance Bonds. Then there is a bond known as a green bond, which is in the same category as green bonds. And then there's also corporate social responsibility bonds and a few others. The sad thing about these bonds, other than the EU climate bond, is that none of them are rated. They're not rated by Morningstar, Fitch, or Moody's, except the climate bond. Now, why is that? The reason it's rated, and it can help the developing world if it's deployed properly, and that's what we are proposing to do together with everybody here, is that the climate bonds are strictly monitored. And that monitoring those bonds are known as taxonomies that I described before and defined before, the rules of the road. And they prevent this concept of greenwashing. So you can't say you're going to do one thing and do another. Because under a green bond or an ESG bond, there's no consequences. However, there are significant consequences if you were to say one thing and do another with the climate bond. And the good news is the climate bond gives us another tool for the developing world. It allows the central banks or the multilateral banks of the developing world, such as banks in the African development banks or the bank in Malaysia or banks in India, to act as guarantors for maximum 183 days. After that, once the bond comes to market, then the funds are used to solve the problems in country that is supporting that bond. So to give you an example, if we have multiple joint venture programs to solve water issues together with waste issues, that comes under the taxonomy of the waste management taxonomy of the EU by their definition, not by a definition of somebody else, not US definition of brownfields, but what the definition is in the EU of a brownfield. And that is a benefit for the developing world countries, such as India, because India has, like everyone else, has water issues, and hopefully we will see the addressing of these solutions and the implementation of these solutions sooner rather than later. The good news is, as Mark pointed out together with Russ, the technology solutions are here. They need to be deployed. To get that deployed, as David Smith pointed out, it has to be done through a public-private partnership. Now, it doesn't necessarily done that way, but it would be preferred. Why? Because as David pointed out, it creates better transparency. You can track the use of funds because the funds are going through the climate bond process, and that is highly regulated from Europe. And that is really good. And it's beneficial to people on the ground in the countries that we deploy our technologies and our systems in. So hopefully, Sharif, that gives some answer to your question.
Thank you. Professor David Smith, if you give some economical analysis right now, because now economic challenge also a big problem right now.
Oh, it is throughout. And see, that's one of the reasons why organizations such as EU have taken the step combined with industry to create these climate bonds so that they can be used to help other regions of the world. Also, if you look at organizations such as the World Bank, the International Development Bank, and efforts of governments such as USAID, they're designed to also bring funds in to help with projects such as these and can be really instrumental in helping with the regions. One of the interesting combinations I've seen recently is using bonds such as these green bonds in conjunction with smaller grants like from the IDB to go ahead and do a two-step to help with the infrastructure project itself, and with a smaller grant from like IDB to assist with the economic development, with the training and the other elements that are necessary to support the project. Also, some of those funds also have been used with other infrastructure projects such as roads, which might be necessary to, again, to help support the projects, but also have a positive effect on the community to allow it to enhance its job situation, its economic development situation, and also to create an environment that lets more entrepreneurship happen because of all these elements coming together. So it's not just the economic developments tied directly to the infrastructure project, the water project, but the things of all the auxiliary enterprises and things that are possible because of the work has been done through this partnership. So, Sharif, I think those are some of the things that can help the others around it. Also, with projects such as this, the water projects like this, it's also going to create opportunities for re-education because some of the positions required to maintain these projects, and particularly the sustainability going into the future, are very much driven by a more educated workforce that comes with results of these public-private partnerships through the training and education that's required. So, Sharif, I think that kind of answers your question.
Thank you, Professor David Smith, Mr. Mark Savin, and Mr. Ras, who want to add some views, especially for project development. Yeah, Mr. Mark.
Yeah, I think that the issues that both Marshall and David Smith are bringing up here are extremely important in terms of being able to address the broader pictures that we're talking about, because the nature of what has to be done at this point, we're in a situation where we're really looking at rather an emergency situation. The environmental degradation that Russ was talking about, the problems that are facing water, the encroaching destruction of the glaciers that we're looking globally around the world, and what that is doing to the sea level rises, has made this situation one where we're really looking at the time to act is now. The time to delay is over. We really need to be able to address these situations immediately and bring the solutions in, because even if we start today, and even if we saw the funding available today, it still takes time to implement. These technologies are not something that you just take off the shelf of the store and put into place. They actually take time to develop. And so these things make the urgency of the situation that we're dealing with really crucial to be able to address that today and to bring these in. And because the opportunities are being made available today, we also feel that the opportunity to move now is there, and the appetite to move there is there today.
Thank you, Mr. Raj. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So here's what we know. The technology is in place. Some other things, again, we know that groundwater is plentiful. 90% population clustered in groundwater, and that's the part that's a attack. You know, we have solutions. We know where to put the solutions. And there's these climate bonds to actualize. And I think it's imperative to tell this story, get the word out there. So we start to make a change. The shot clock is talking. If not now, then when? And if we do this, how are we to explain to our grandchildren that we sleep at the switch? So.
Thanks, Ross. That was that's a very poignant statement. Sharif, I think one of the things that this entire team on this panel has addressed and will continue to address in our series on taking the climate crisis as a serious issue is that we are looking, and this is something that we need to think about emotionally, not just logically. We have to understand that because of the pandemic and the global down play of the economy back in March of 2020, and even now we may see because of other issues an attack on our economies. The European Union's commitment to a circular economy may be accelerated by crisis, which is ironic. But it has already undertaken that mission, and the benefit of that approach comes to the developing world with people like you and us working together with developing world countries to form these public-private partnerships. That's a tongue twister there for me. To get the issue out that we can act now. And the beauty of it is two innovations, besides the technological innovations, two financial innovations are in place. One is the pre-issuance credit enhancement guarantee, and two, the ability to get funders in blended finance, as David pointed out, concessionary finance through grants, together with public finance through the climate bond issued on the Luxembourg Green Exchange, and to get a lot of money put into place to create solutions that are ready to be deployed now. Now, there's a point here that Mark made that I want to bring up. Time is of the essence. But what does that mean in practical terms? And Sharif, I think you know we like to be practical. So we know that the shortest period of time, as soon as the money comes into the ability to get that climate bond done, it takes about 15 to 18 months to deploy all the technologies. The good news is a lot of the technology can be deployed sooner, such as the ultra nano bubble generators, depending on how many are required, can be deployed sooner rather than later. But we need to integrate these technologies to solve the 17 sustainability development goals, to meet those goals, and at the same time, increase the job opportunities for the local people. And as Mark pointed out, address them, and I think this is a favorite of yours, Sharif, for the cultural attitudes in that country. Obviously, the culture in India, it is different, even in different parts of India. So if you're in the northern part of India, near the Himalayas, as opposed to the southern part of India, you might have cultural differences. But the same thing is between countries. Cultural differences between Malaysia and Thailand, or cultural differences between the Western European Union and Sub-Saharan Africa. We can address these issues and may allow people to generate their opportunities for themselves. We are here to help foster that, and that's our mission. Our mission is climate restoration and climate repair.
Excellent. That is the strategy that we everyone try to implement in World Talent Economy Forums, because as we more focus on economy, we need technology, we need human resources, as well as we need investment. So thank you. This is really great discussion, and I believe this is very, very helpful for our audience. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks from today. For today, I want to start from Mr. Rush. What is your concluding remarks?
Well, I think that based on what the issues are and what the technology is, I think it can be a win-win situation. And as Marshall said and Mark said, we're running out of time. It's sources that we're burning, and when it's gone, there's nothing that can replace it. It's unique.
Thank you. Mr. Mark Sabin, what's your concluding remarks for today?
Yeah, I think, I think it was well concluded by Marshall, and I think the issue that we really want to deal with is that we have the tools in hand. They are available to us now to bring these solutions to each place that they needed to be implemented, and that each place that they need to be implemented has its own unique needs. And one of the key things that is important about this approach that we're talking about taking is that each place where these technologies are deployed is a joint venture. So there is a venture where the people with the team of engineers and scientists and inventors and business people and people who have the policy chops to do this kind of thing are going to join with people in the local community, so that this is not something where it's an imposition into a place where some kind of other power is coming in and imposing themselves on the local community, but is actually joining together, and it is a partnership, which I think is such a key word that is at the heart of David Smith's work, that it's a public-private partnership. And even at the level that we're talking about, in each venture is a joint venture, which is a form of partnership. So I think that's a key thing that I would like people to be able to take away from today's discussion.
Thank you. Professor David Smith.
Sharif, thank you again for this important topic. You do come up with ones that have impact not only within your own part of the world, but globally as well. And this is a great example of that. Mark, Marshall, Russ have all been correct in that this is an issue that's important for us to address. The time is short. Doing it in a partnership makes the most sense in the world because it goes beyond just the point solution and helps create something that's sustainable for the long run. These need to be sustainable for the long run to have the impacts that are necessary to help with the environmental impacts we desire to have. So Sharif, thank you so much for letting me be part of this today.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks? And if you want to give some brief advice, because all of our content we are actually sharing with our students community, those who are taking preparations for their competition. So they will observe our show. So what is the concluding remarks and what type of advice you want to give for the youth community?
Well, I think, Sharif, that first of all, again, as David and Mark and Russ have all said, thank you for hosting this for us today and in our continuing series on addressing the climate crisis. My concluding remarks are pretty much straightforward. We need to be practical. We need to act now. We have the means. We have the technology. The money is there. The question is the will there? And is the recognition of the innovation, the financial innovations of what's termed impact finance or blended finance understood to the point that we can do it in a way that the governments who are backing this approach, they're risk mitigated. They're not at risk. We can mitigate the risk. We have the mechanism and we've developed that. That came out of Europe. It is called the Paris Climate Bond Protocol, not to be confused with the Paris Climate Accord, which is something else. That's that agreement from 2015, I believe. But the Paris Climate Protocol allows entities such as ourselves, together with the entities such as the World Talent Economic Forum, to deploy and fund the ability through private investors in Europe and the United States and other parts of the Western world at infrastructure level, and create infrastructure solutions in local communities, as Mark pointed it out. Now, my advice to those who are listening, I have advice for several audiences out there. First of all, for the students who are in the midst of getting their degrees and or thinking about what area do they want to go into, we need people, as we deploy these systems, to not only operate the systems, but to be part of the management teams of these systems. All the joint ventures that we will deploy will be good paying jobs with quality approach. And a quality education is important. That's why the students out there should complete their degrees. And some people are just going to go through what we call the school of hard knocks. And we recognize that, and we don't discriminate against them either. But if you want to learn and you have curiosity about your climate and the conditions you're living in and how you can contribute, get your education, complete it, and reach out to companies such as ourselves so that we can deploy and get the kind of people we need and the educated people we need to be able to do what's required. Not everybody needs to know mathematics, though it does help. I can tell you that. Not everybody needs to be a scientist, but it helps. But we need people who understand basic economics, and we need people who need to understand how to manage other people in the psychology of management. We need people of all ranks and profiles. We need men and women to be able to get their education and come and improve the lives of themselves and hopefully the lives of their children and grandchildren, such as we're doing. I already have 4 grandchildren, so I'm out there trying to do this. The other element, I would say, is the other audience members out there. If you are a bank or if you are a government official that is looking to improve the quality of life of your people and your financial institutions, come and have dialogue with Sharif. Have dialogue with us. Let's get going and execute. We're not the only ones on the planet doing this, but we can bring others. We need to bring others. No one company can do it itself. No one government can do it all itself, no matter how powerful the government is. We need everybody, and as the old sailing expression, I'm an old sailor, all hands on deck. We're in the middle of a major storm. It's a climate storm, and we need to address it. So as we hoist the sails of hope, that's what I call them, the sails of hope, we need to reach out to everyone in every community that we work with to work together with us to solve these issues, create quality jobs, and create some equality in their lives and some opportunity and hope. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really, really great sessions. And I believe for our audience, this is really great advice from Mr. Marshall and from other speakers as well. And I request all of our audience, please share our content as much as possible with your government, with your corporations, and with academy. Thank you, Mr. Marshall, Professor David Smith, Mr. Mark Sabin, and Mr. Raj for joining today's session. And thank you for all of your support for World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
See you next week, Sharif.
Thank you,
Sure.
Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.